I wanted to have part two of that Vervaeke and Pajot video out by now, but the snag I'm running into is that while the metaphysics of quality isn't all that difficult to explain and understand in theory, it gets tricky in practice. And of course, the thesis, I suppose, of this whole channel is how do you take that theory and put it into practice? So this is really an ongoing thing. For one thing, the metaphysics of quality has an inherent code of ethics that is obvious until mankind shows up. On the organic and biological levels, it's pretty. It makes sense, but once the intellect is involved, once society, the social level, the intellect become involved, it's not so obvious. And now, as we become less collective and more individual, there's individuals making their own moral decisions all the time. So while that sounds kind of vague, this is that's how it's ending up being, is kind of vague. So I'm kind of struggling with some things and trying to make them coherent without going down the road of academic philosophy, which I can't do because I don't have the background, and which I don't want to do. I want to do this as a practice rather than a theory. But I'm on vacation and I'm working on it today, and so what I think I'm going to do is just put it out there, warts and all. So I've links to two papers, or rather two articles I'm using to help me with this, and they're at the end of this video if you're interested. One is the explanation of the metaphysics of quality, or at least an article by the expert in this area, which is the man who got his PhD in the metaphysics of quality, and that would be, of course, Anthony McWatt, and I think he got his PhD in 2004, 2005. The other is by Pirsig himself from the 90s, where he compares his theory with that of Niels Bohr, the complementarity theory. Very interesting. But the reason I'm including it is within the paper is Pirsig's description of his own theory, and both are very useful for understanding the metaphysics of quality. But since I'm here, I want to share a few thoughts. First, why am I on YouTube? Well, I think YouTube is the one social media that's worth its salt these days. And I think with so many people on it now, it's becoming a form of social media where you can actually share more deeply. You can't just post a meme on YouTube. Well, maybe you can, but within my corner of YouTube, which I guess is sort of oriented around, I guess Jordan Peterson is the Chicago is the Atlanta airport for this corner of the internet. But you can't just throw anything out there. You have to make an effort to articulate what you're trying to convey if you expect any engagement at all. So this is creating communities where you can share your particular area of interest, and in a truly meaningful way, because you have to put a lot of effort into it. And that effort is rewarded with other people doing the same, who are on the same journey. So I'm here for this reason, and I feel like a community is there, and I've gotten really positive feedback from people I really respect and who I think have a handle on what we need to do to manage the layers and layers and layers of informational removal from reality. Remember John Vervaeke's real world versus the everyday world. Our everyday world is so layered with information. We have to get back to the real experience of what it means to be a human being. And revivifying previous ways of doing that is one thing that interests me. So also thank you, Paul Vanderklay, for your kindness and your promotion. I was pretty vulnerable when I articulated my own struggle with faith and with spirituality, and in fact, I was a little reluctant to share it. I thought it might be kind of personal, but I'm glad I did. I think it's useful that so many of us, as Paul has articulated, so many of us are kind of going through this. And so, Paul, thank you for introducing me to the community, so to speak, where I feel I can contribute, since we are all dealing in this corner with the spiritual and metaphysical challenges of our times. So I was looking up, just for the hell of it, the top YouTubers, and the top 5,000 YouTubers have each have over 2 million subscribers. And some of them, I think one channel has like 100 million. And I don't think on this list, I kind of perused it, maybe I missed someone, but I don't think I even ran into anyone I subscribe to. Mostly it appears to be reality TV, Indian movies, video games, and of course music. All the recording stars are on there. So it's an interesting world out there. I don't think I even thought about this stuff. And so think about the implications of this. This is a perfect example of the amount of information, of informational objects, let's just say, that we now have to deal with. So is it any wonder that the utility of subject-object metaphysics is coming to an end? We're producing super salient objects, events, by the millions every day. And here's a thought. These are actually objects, even though you can't hold and touch them. And we react to these shows as if they are real things happening. So subjective experiences are as real as anything. And this is one of the key tenets of the metaphysics of quality. And this is what the people whose own worldviews and theories have in common with the metaphysics of quality, and which is why I'm so interested in these people, like Ken Wilber, and Jordan Peterson, and obviously Vervaeke and Pageau. There's a whole group of people who understand subjective objects as real. Remember that the Sam Harris and Peterson debate, which is what brought this necessary shift of metaphysics and of consciousness to the forefront. And it's sort of happening. I'm going to mention Ken Wilber's teal level again. That's not some kind of cosmic, groovy thing that we're achieving. This is a different consciousness. This is one that has a different metaphysics. So I want to read something from Pirsig. The metaphysics of quality subscribes to what is called empiricism. It claims that all legitimate human knowledge arises from the senses or by thinking based on what the senses provide. Most empiricists deny the validity of any knowledge gained through imagination, authority, tradition, or purely theoretical reasoning. They regard fields such as art, morality, religion, and metaphysics as unverifiable. The metaphysics of quality varies from this by saying that the values of art and morality and even religious mysticism are verifiable, and that in the past they've been excluded for metaphysical reasons, not empirical reasons. They've been excluded because of the metaphysical assumption that the universe is composed of subjects and objects, and anything else can't be classified as a subject and object is anything that can't be classified as a subject or an object is not real. There is no empirical evidence for this assumption at all. So that's in that McWatt article you can link to, and I think Pirsig wrote that to McWatt. McWatt exchanged a lot of correspondence with Pirsig, so he's a great resource. After that, in that article, McWatt goes to point out that the analytical knife, which has also recently come up in my Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance reading series, is something that can be used in many ways. My observation is it can be, just so long as the game is playable, let's just say the division, the way the knife is used, can be seen as valid. But some games are better than others, and according to Pirsig, the metaphysics we are using, subject-to-object metaphysics, is a finite game. There's a book by I think it's James Carse. I know the guy's last name is Carse. It's called Finite and Infinite Games. Both Pirsig and Jordan Peterson reference this book. The metaphysics of quality is an infinite game. It has been going on since the Big Bang, and we need to get back into this. Let's just say something like it is the metaphysics of the real world. So, and we want to be playing infinite games as much as possible. So, according to Pirsig, we could have carved this up a lot better 2,500 years ago or so, and now we're paying for that surgical error. Another thing I want to mention is that Eckhart Tolle was on Dave Rubin, and I think that's a good thing. I see Eckhart Tolle as a gateway drug from from let's just say atheism and or nihilism into spirituality. And this is someone who had a genuine transformative mystical experience and shared it in a sincere way in the book, The Power of Now, which he didn't even write to make money or anything like that. He was just compelled to write it. It conveys the way it feels to be transformed and gives hope to people who really are suffering. So in my clinical practice, not being able to access what Viktor Frankl calls the noetic dimension, the spiritual part of ourself, is it's a big problem. When you don't have access to that part of yourself, you feel like you're just a buoy on the waves of misfortune, bobbing hither and yon. And in order to get a sense of agency, you have to feel transformation is possible. Tolle does this for people. And even though he goes on Oprah, etc., he's not someone to be dismissed lightly. So I'm really glad he was on the Dave Rubin show. And I'm glad he doesn't go, oh, well, Dave Rubin had, say, Stephen Molyneux on there, and therefore, I mean, this is another thing I like about Tolle. He's, if you are in that state, you judge things as they happen. You don't really judge things categorically, so to speak. And Oprah does have some good people on her Super Soul Sunday. Richard Rohr was on there, for example. That's in my opinion, a heavyweight. So another tip of the hat to Paul Vanderklay. Here's what I'm reading now. I hope you can see it because I can't see myself. This addresses some of my own wrestling with the noetic dimension, let's just say, with faith. And I want to read one thing on the back. This is from the New York Times Book Review, and this book was written in 1947. C.S. Lewis is the ideal persuader for the half-convinced, for the good man who would like to be a Christian but finds his intellect getting in the way. So I hope that made sense, and I will see you for the next part of the Vervaeke Pageau commentary in the next few days.